When COVID began creeping up on the world, it became impossible to ignore within just a matter of weeks. Hospitals overflowed, governments imposed lockdowns, and every new day brought a fresh case count, a new variant, or a dire medical warning. But what if I told you there's another global health crisis that has been growing for years, one that kills people every day, threatens some of the biggest achievements of modern medicine, and yet rarely makes front page headlines? In fact, many public health experts have started describing it as a silent pandemic. And that crisis is called Antimicrobial Resistance, or AMR. Now, that may sound like one of those technical medical terms that only concerns doctors and scientists. But the reality is that AMR affects something most of us take for granted: the confidence that when we get a serious bacterial infection, there will be a medicine available to treat it. In this episode of The Brief, we'll talk about a significant breakthrough against AMR. Well, that and another recent medical marvel that has largely flown under the radar. So, stay tuned and do leave a feedback in the comment section. Have you heard about the antibiotic Zaynich recently? Developed by Indian pharmaceutical company Wockhardt, Zenic is being viewed as one of the most significant antibiotic developments in years. It is designed to tackle exactly the kind of multidrug-resistant bacteria that are causing growing alarm among doctors across the world. These aren't ordinary infections. These are pathogens that have learned how to defeat multiple generations of antibiotics, including some drugs that doctors reserve as the last line of defense. What also makes this development significant is that on May 30, the US Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, approved Zenic, which is an intravenous antibiotic developed entirely by the Mumbai-based company. And with this, it became the first new chemical entity, or NCE, that is fully invented, developed and commercialized by an Indian firm to receive the FDA's approval. In simple terms, an NCE is a molecule that did not exist before. An effort that largely began in 2011 has now come to fruition. What makes Zenic particularly important is that it combines cefepime, a powerful fourth generation antibiotic, with zidibactam, a completely new molecule that helps overcome some of the resistance mechanisms bacteria have developed over time. In simple terms, it is not just another antibiotic entering an already crowded market. It is part of a broader effort to ensure that modern medicine does not lose one of its most important weapons at a time when AMR is emerging as one of the biggest health threats. To understand why that matters, we first need to understand the scale of the problem Zenic is trying to solve. For nearly a century, antibiotics have been one of humanity's greatest inventions. They transformed medicine, made surgery safer, reduced deaths from infectious diseases, and helped create the healthcare system we know today. The problem is that the bacteria those drugs were designed to kill have not been standing still. They have been evolving, and in many cases, they are evolving faster than we are developing new drugs to fight them. But as I said earlier, this episode is not just about antibiotic resistance. At almost the same time that researchers have been trying to outsmart drug-resistant bacteria, another group of scientists has been fighting a very different enemy, one of the deadliest cancers known to medicine. And after decades of efforts, they may finally be making progress there too. These are two different stories. One is about superbugs, the other about pancreatic cancer, but both are really stories about the same thing. What happens when science refuses to give up on problems that many people believed were impossible to solve? Let's dive right in. Before we talk about Zenic, let's spend a moment understanding the scale of the problem it is trying to address. If you developed pneumonia in the early 20th century, there was a good chance it could kill you. Today, many bacterial infections that once terrified doctors are treated routinely. We have become so accustomed to that reality that it feels permanent. But actually, it isn't all that permanent. The effectiveness of antibiotics depends on the fact that bacteria remain vulnerable to them. And that is where the AMR problem begins. Bacteria are among the most adaptable organisms on Earth. Every time we use an antibiotic, we place them under pressure. Most die, but a few survive. Those survivors multiply, and over time, the bacteria that remain are increasingly the ones that learn how to resist the drug. Of course, Evolution is a natural process for all organisms, but the problem here is that human behavior has accelerated it dramatically. Antibiotics are often prescribed when they are not even needed. Patients often stop taking them as soon as they start feeling better rather than completing the prescribed course. In many parts of the world, antibiotics have also been used extensively in livestock and agriculture. Every one of these actions creates more opportunities for the bacteria to adapt. Think of it as an arms race. Every time we develop a new antibiotic, bacteria begin searching for new weapons against it. The result is the emergence of what doctors call multidrug-resistant organisms or MDR pathogens. These are bacteria that can survive several classes of antibiotics. Some can even withstand drugs that were once considered medicines of last resort. And that creates a problem not just for infectious disease specialists, but for the entire healthcare system. Imagine a patient undergoing chemotherapy. The treatment suppresses the immune system, making infections more dangerous. Imagine a patient receiving an organ transplant or someone recovering from major surgery. In all these situations, antibiotics provide a critical safety net. If that safety net weakens, modern medicine becomes more vulnerable. This is why AMR is often described as one of the greatest public health challenges of the 21st century. And while this is a global issue, some regions face a particularly difficult burden. Low and middle income countries often have limited surveillance systems, uneven healthcare access, and high infectious disease loads. Resistant organisms can spread much more easily, and advanced treatment options are often less accessible. India occupies a very peculiar position within this story. On the one hand, India has frequently found itself at the center of discussions about antimicrobial resistance. Public health experts have repeatedly emphasized the need for responsible antibiotic use, but on the other hand, India is also known as the pharmacy of the world. The country manufactures an enormous proportion of the medicines consumed globally and plays a vital role in making treatments affordable. Clearly, India is not just part of the challenge, it is also a big part of the solution. And that brings us to Zenic. To understand why infectious disease specialists are stopping and paying attention to this drug, one must note how difficult antibiotic innovation has become. Developing antibiotics is expensive, the scientific hurdles are massive, and unlike medicines that patients take for years, antibiotics are usually prescribed for relatively short periods. From purely a business perspective for pharma companies, that has made the field less attractive than areas such as diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, or cancer. As a result, many large pharmaceutical companies have been known to gradually reduce their focus on antibiotic discovery. Now, Zenic is a combination of two drugs, cefepime and zidibactam. Cefepime is a fourth-generation cephalosporin antibiotic that has long been recognized as a powerful treatment against a broad range of bacteria. But resistant bacteria have developed defenses against these antibiotics as well. One of the defense mechanisms of bacteria involves enzymes called beta-lactamases. These enzymes essentially break down antibiotics, rendering them ineffective. Zidibactam was developed to tackle precisely this problem. It blocks these defensive enzymes and, unlike older inhibitors, also possesses antibacterial activity of its own. In other words, it protects cefepime and then actively participates in the attack against bacteria. Many of the pathogens that worry hospitals today belong to a group known as gram-negative bacteria. Among other organisms, it includes certain strains of E. coli. Over the years, many of these have accumulated multiple resistance mechanisms, making infections increasingly difficult to treat. For doctors treating these infections, every new drug is a massive relief. Now, it is important not to present Zenic as some miracle cure. History teaches us that bacteria are extraordinarily resourceful. Resistance eventually emerges against almost every antibiotic if it is used irresponsibly. That is why every breakthrough in this field comes with a warning. Developing new antibiotics is only half the battle won. Preserving them and using them responsibly is equally important. Zenic received approval from the US FDA for treating complicated urinary tract infections, often called CUTIs, including serious kidney infections. Now, a urinary tract infection may sound routine, but complicated UTIs are very different. These are infections that often require hospitalization, can spread into bloodstreams, and are increasingly being caused by bacteria that have learned how to resist multiple antibiotics. In the United States alone, CUTIs are responsible for more than 600,000 hospitalizations every year, and doctors are finding it increasingly difficult to treat some of these infections because of rising antimicrobial resistance. In a large phase 3 clinical trial involving 530 patients across the US, Europe, Latin America, China, and India, Zenic achieved an 89% clinical and microbiological response rate compared with 68.4% for meropenem, one of the most widely used antibiotics in hospitals. Now, on to the next big medical marvel. Those of you who spend time on social media may have come across a rather unusual video in the last few days. It wasn't a viral dance, a product launch, or even a sporting celebration. Instead, it showed a room full of cancer researchers, doctors, and scientists erupting into applause at one of the world's biggest cancer conferences, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, or ASCO. For a field that is usually cautious, data-driven, and reluctant to celebrate too early, the reaction was remarkable. The reason? A new drug called Daraxonrasib had just delivered results against pancreatic cancer that many experts are calling one of the most important breakthroughs the disease has seen in decades. Pancreatic cancer is often discovered late because symptoms may not appear until the disease has already progressed. The pancreas sits deep inside the abdomen, making early detection difficult. By the time many patients are diagnosed, the cancer has already spread beyond its original location. That alone would make treatment challenging. The pancreas helps regulate blood sugar and digestion. Mortality rates of the disease closely mirror incidence, and that results in about 470,000 deaths across the world each year. Pancreatic cancer has been one of the most stubbornly resistant cancers in medicine. Researchers have tried many approaches. Experimental drugs have come and gone, clinical trials have succeeded in animals only to disappoint in humans, and over time, funding has also been a point of debate. For years, meaningful progress seemed frustratingly slow, which raises an obvious question: why? If scientists have spent decades studying pancreatic cancer, why has it been so difficult to treat? Part of the answer lies in a molecule called KRAS. Now, most people wouldn't have heard about KRAS before, but in cancer research, it is one of the most important proteins ever discovered. Scientists realized decades ago that mutations involving KRAS were helping drive some of the deadliest cancers known to medicine. Pancreatic cancer was one of them. Lung cancer and colorectal cancer were the others. In other words, researchers knew where one of the challenges was hiding. The problem was figuring out how to stop it. Normally, drugs work by attaching themselves to specific parts of proteins. You can think of it like finding a handle on a door. Once you have a grip, you can influence what that protein does. KRAS, which is a smooth-surfaced protein inside cells that regulates growth, seemed to offer no such handle. It's actually a mutation in a family of genes called RAS genes. Researchers understood its role, but they could not find a way to attack it. As years passed, frustration grew and scientists kept trying. Drug companies invested enormous resources, and eventually KRAS acquired an almost mythical reputation. For many scientists, KRAS became a symbol of the limits of modern drug development. And here's where a researcher named Kevin Wockhardt enters the picture. While many others had concluded that KRAS was extremely difficult to target, Wockhardt suspected the protein might possess vulnerabilities. And the team of scientists found that a drug called Daraxonrasib works by binding to and switching off mutated KRAS proteins, preventing them from continuously sending growth signals that drive cancer. According to a wonderfully reported story in the New York Times, Kevin Wockhardt, a scientist at the University of California, spent 5 years screening 500 molecules until finally he found a crack in the KRAS protein. He then published his landmark finding in 2013. Around the same time, Greg Verdine explored a novel molecular glue approach that could effectively trap and disable KRAS. Their work eventually converged at Revolution Medicines, which developed Daraxonrasib. The drug showed an unexpected ability to shut down KRAS while largely sparing healthy cells, something many researchers thought was impossible. Early trials produced shrinking tumors and manageable side effects, while some patients with advanced pancreatic cancer have remained alive and benefiting from treatment years after entering studies. And this drug has now been fast-tracked for review by the US FDA, and by most accounts, it could get approved later this year. Until then, however, the FDA has cleared a plan by Revolution Medicines, the Silicon Valley company that has developed the drug, to open early access to select patients. While it is a big breakthrough, what's really important to note is that it is not a cure. Taken orally as pills 3 times a day, it does stop working after a point, and it has side effects that emerge as rashes, diarrhea, fatigue, and nausea, among other things. But it's a very crucial checkpoint in the fight against cancer. Recent trial data involving around 500 patients across North America, Europe, and Asia compared Daraxonrasib with chemotherapy in patients with advanced pancreatic cancer carrying KRAS mutations. Patients receiving chemotherapy survived for a median of about 6.6 months, but patients receiving Daraxonrasib survived for a median of about 13.2 months. Think about that for a moment. For many cancers, an extra few months can be meaningful. In pancreatic cancer, where progress has often come painfully slow, doubling survival time is the kind of result that immediately deserves attention. Equally important is the fact that the drug appeared to cause fewer side effects than chemotherapy. That does not mean the treatment is easy or is all figured out. It does not mean that every patient responds. And it certainly does not mean that pancreatic cancer has been defeated. But it's a genuine breakthrough. And when we step back from these two stories, a common theme emerges. The first story involved bacteria evolving resistance faster than medicine could respond. The second involved cancer exploiting a biological mechanism that scientists struggled to target for more than 40 years. In both cases, researchers spent years confronting what appeared to be impossible obstacles. In both cases, progress required persistence, creativity, and a willingness to challenge assumptions that many people accepted as fact. Most importantly, both stories remind us that scientific breakthroughs rarely happen overnight. By the time a new antibiotic reaches patients or a new cancer drug produces dramatic trial results, there are often decades of failed experiments, abandoned ideas, and painstaking research hidden beneath the surface. That work is easy to overlook because the breakthrough is what makes headlines. But the breakthrough exists only because thousands of scientists refuse to stop searching for answers. The battles against antimicrobial resistance and pancreatic cancer are far from over. Bacteria will continue evolving, cancer will continue adapting, new challenges will continue emerging. But if Zenic and Daraxonrasib demonstrate anything, it is that through science, today's impossible problem can become tomorrow's breakthrough.